Hello everyone, my name is Monica Ricosi and welcome to the Fashion and Sustainability Summit. The 2020 series is a collaboration of FashionDex and LIM College. The summit is sponsored by EcoLife Yarns, producing sustainable yarns for over 60 years and the first in the world to spin recycled fiber yarn, as well as Kendor Textiles Limited, specializing in environmentally and socially responsible textiles, and the Accessory Council. Today is week 9, and we are about to have a conversation on circularity and closed-loop materials. Today's speakers are Andrea Ferris of Intrinsic Textiles Group, Ashley Gill of Textile Exchange, George Mataix of Belda Llorens, Tony Verutti of Parley for the Oceans, and Ryan W. Hunt of ALGIX and Bloom. Today's lead moderator is Fatima Anwar of Ethical and Sustainable Sourcing, as well as Austin Sierra of LIM College. I would like to now introduce our first speaker. George, if you could unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, good evening, good morning or good evening in the United States. This is Jorge Mataix, and I am the owner and CEO of the company Belda Llorens, and also the owner of the brand EcoLife. EcoLife, our mission, we are ubicated in Spain and we are producers of open-end yarns, and our mission regarding the circular economy is to convert sustainable fibers coming from recycled materials into high quality yarns for a responsible fashion business and the home textiles. We keep researching and innovating and developing new sustainable fibers to reduce the footprint of the planet. Our major production today, and we are very well known as a producer of recycled cotton fibers, but also we, in the last year, since we got the EcoLife brand, we got involved into recycled polyester post-consumer, and lately on a new recycled viscose coming from the waste of the filaments. We also contribute to the circular economy by using our own material, our own waste internally, and part of it also go to other industrial and other spinning mills to make cleaning yarns and thick yarns. We also contribute to the circular economy by using in certain yarns 10% of bed linen or towels, used towels coming from the laundries, and then we get that into shudi and make new yarns using 10% out of it. And also we have certain agreements with customers that they make t-shirts and they send it back to us, and we make out of it fiber again and reuse in a certain percentage. We are also doing new projects going into sustainability as a biodegradable polyester, recycled polyester, by an additive that we are just testing now and making new yarns out of it. And we are also in a project, a European project, that we are developing also a new yarn coming from the biomass, especially this coming from the tomato plant waste. And this is more or less our goals and our contribution to the circular economy and the closed loop materials.
Up next, we have Andrea Ferris.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea Ferris, and I am CEO and co-founder of Intrinsic Advanced Materials. And actually, if you could go to my first slide, that would be helpful. Thank you. So our company is Intrinsic Advanced Materials, and we are a joint venture partnership between Intrinsic Textiles Group, which is a textile startup here in Northern California that I helped co-found, and Parkdale Advanced Materials, which is the innovative fibers and yarns division of Parkdale Mills. Parkdale Mills, for anyone who's not familiar with them, is the largest yarn spinner in this hemisphere and the second largest yarn spinner in the world. So we have partnered to bring our technology, which is branded Ciclo, C-I-C-L-O, to market and scale it up. And Ciclo is an additive-based technology that gets added to synthetic fiber. So that's polyester, nylon, polypropylene, polyethylene. And the purpose of it is to accelerate the biodegradation in various environments, ultimately reducing the persistence of synthetic textile pollution. So how are we reducing the persistence of synthetic pollution? We're very specifically focused on two problems. The first problem is the persistence of the plastic microfiber pollution caused largely by our clothes being laundered and winding up in the environment and oftentimes in the ocean. Ellen MacArthur Foundation, in their Circular Fibers Initiative report that came out back in 2018, estimated that pollution to be microfibers in weight equivalent to 50 billion plastic bottles entering the oceans every year. So in the form of very small plastic microfibers coming off of our garments. And the second problem that we're solving for is the issue of all of our textiles really going to landfill. So globally, 73% of all textiles are either landfilled or incinerated. And in the United States alone, it's estimated that 99% of all textiles are going to landfill after their third useful life. So maybe they're made into rags, maybe they're handed down, but ultimately they're winding up in landfill. And in the United States, just the synthetic portion of that winds up being about 44 million pounds of synthetics every day in landfill. So our technology, that's a picture of it in my hand, it looks like polyester before it gets melted down, looks very much like that. And it gets melted down during the initial fiber development phase during melt extrusion. And it becomes permanently and uniformly embedded in the matrix of the plastic. There's no kind of a chemical reaction, it's just embedded in the fiber. And ultimately what it does is it creates countless biodegradable spots where microbes can build functional entities and break down the material that they normally can't access. And so when polyester or nylon or other synthetics are treated with Ciclo, these materials can biodegrade at greatly accelerated rates in wastewater treatment plant sludge, seawater, and anaerobic landfill conditions. That's kind of high level. There's lots I could tell you about the science, and I'd be happy to in any follow-up, but that's what we do. So thanks for having me here today. I'm really excited that there's so many people interested in the circular economy.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and welcome. Up next, we have Ryan W. Hunt from ALGIX and Bloom. If you could unmute yourself and speak a little about your company.
Yes, thank you so much. So my name is Ryan Hunt. I'm the co-founder and chief technology officer for Bloom. At ALGIX, we are working to build the sustainable supply chain using algae. Algae is being used as a tool to clean air and water pollution and transform the CO2, the nitrogen, and the phosphorus from our emissions into a renewable feedstock that we can convert into a displacement for plastics. So here are some pictures of what the supply chain looks like. On the top left, you'll see us actually harvesting wild algae blooms out of lakes as a part of a global lake restoration process. We work with federal governments in the US and in China to clean lakes of algae blooms, thereby exporting the nutrients. We dry that algae into a dry powder and we compound it into thermoplastic pellets that are used by conversion factories for brands to produce everything from footwear, sole products, insoles, midsoles, outsoles, as well as yoga mats, sports products, and we're even working in automotive now. So the idea is that as we are scaling up this algae supply chain, we are going to be not only cleaning the environment from areas that have been plagued with environmental water quality issues, but we're also able to intercept this pollution at the source, utilizing engineered systems that intercept the pollution at the factory, the power plant, the water plant, or the textile mill, and we're able to transform that invisible pollution into a new material that we can use to displace plastics in consumer products. Some of the products that we've been creating so far are the collaborations with big brands such as Adidas, as Merrell, Reebok. You'll see Kelly Slater there in the middle with his traction pad on a surfboard. New Balance, Tentree, and many others. So we can provide these materials to blend into a variety of consumer products, and we're actually growing our relationships with more and more brands. So we've got over 70 brands that have launched with us so far. We've got over 120 more in the pipeline. Our goal is to help create and accelerate the adoption of circular economy principles, where the pollution that we emit from an industrial perspective can be captured, intercepted, and transformed back into raw materials that can help us reduce our dependence on fossil fuel-based plastics and produce more sustainable products through a quantified and LCA proven process. So I'm honored to be here and to speak about ALGIX and our brand Bloom, and would be happy to answer any questions moving forward. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ryan. Up next, we have Ashley Gill.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I am the Director of Standards at Textile Exchange. Standards is one of the areas of work that we do. We're actually a little bit different than the rest of the folks on today's panel. We are a nonprofit organization. We've been around since for about 15 years. Mostly in our history, we focused on organic cotton, but since 2010, we've expanded that view to look at the broader fiber and materials portfolio, and recycled materials are a big part of the work that Textile Exchange does. Our mission is to inspire and equip the industry, so we really take that to heart. We love working with industry experts. All of you guys are the ones that are making the change happen. We're just here to support you, make sure you have all the information that you need and can make really good decisions about the fibers that end up in your product. On the standards team, we work on certification. So our recycled standard verifies raw materials, verifies that they're recycled, and then tracks them through the supply chain so that consumers, brands and retailers, suppliers can have a lot of confidence in the material that they're selling. We also want to focus on climate outcomes. So Textile Exchange has recently, at the end of last year, announced a really exciting and kind of scary target of 35 to 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions within the fiber production part of the apparel supply chain. And we'll be talking more about that in coming months about how we want to get there. But that's really the focus of Textile Exchange and the focus of my work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashley. And last but not least, we have Tony Verutti.
Hey, everybody. Great to be on this panel. Very interesting group here, and very excited to talk to you all about Parley. Parley is actually a conversion of peace amongst different entities that can help become the change to protect and conserve the oceans. We work with governments. We just signed a partnership with the World Bank back in June to partner with 8 countries actually in South Asia to intercept plastic waste. We're best known for our partnership probably with Adidas, but ultimately Parley is an organization that collaborates with a lot of different entities, with governments, with artists, with designers, with big brands, and really anybody who is interested in changing the way that we're consuming products in the world. Can you go to the next slide, please? And Parley really was founded on the idea that every environmental issue today is actually a design challenge. We've designed our way into the environmental threats that we face, and we see climate change more and more every day. And we believe that we can actually redesign the materials, the processes that are leading to the challenges that we face. And so the mission is really to invent our way out of the toxic age that we have created for the oceans, for climate, and for life. And we are an ocean conservation organization. Our founders were actually designers by trade, but when we looked at it, we realized 7 years ago, ultimately, that the oceans are suffering from climate change, from overfishing, and from plastic pollution. And we realized that, with 70% of this earth being covered in water, and every other breath we take coming from the oceans, we need urgent action. And we want to reframe certain things around being an environmentalist, which has this concept of being kind of a hippie, right? We want to call ourselves futurists. We want to find this way to redefine the new vision of economy. And we don't really like the idea of sustainability. Sustainability, by definition, means that you're staying still. You're keeping things constant. We want to innovate. We want to change. We want to create. And really, the power of creation is at the forefront of what Parley does. So this is all founded on the idea of air. Air is the fact that every second breath we take comes from the ocean. It's also our response to the idea of recycle, reduce, reuse. 9% of plastic globally is being recycled. And we ultimately want to avoid using plastic altogether, especially virgin plastic. We want to intercept it before it goes into the ocean. And this is based on Parley's global cleanup network. We're operating in over 30 countries now, intercepting plastic from beaches and coastlines all over the world. And that is scaling up now. We're now partnering officially with 20 countries through this partnership with the World Bank to really intercept plastic from beaches and coastlines and from oceans to transform it into a material, a luxury material that I'll touch on briefly here in a minute. And then ultimately, we want to redesign harmful materials altogether. We want to redesign plastic, and some of the things that Ryan was talking about as well. What are the future of materials? What are the things that where we don't even need plastic? That is ultimately where we would like to get to. And so this air strategy is the way that we frame every partnership and everything we do. We think about how do we avoid using plastic or other toxic materials, intercept it, and then redesign it altogether. This shoe is an iconic shoe. It was announced 5 years ago at the United Nations. Parley and Adidas made this shoe from with Sea Shepherd, the illegal fishing nets that they pulled out of the sea, along with plastic waste that we transformed into premium ocean plastic, which is our trademark of materials that we use from intercepted plastic waste. This shoe, we made 50 of these, and since that time, 5 years ago, we've gone on to sell over 30 million products with Adidas from plastic that we've intercepted from beaches and coastlines all over the world. We've gone on to create the first ever credit card with American Express using ocean plastic. And we've partnered with other major brands such as Anheuser-Busch InBev and a handful of others, and continue to really lead through the idea of creating symbols of change. The shoe is really what we call a symbol of change, and the credit card is a symbol of change. And it really is a tool to drive awareness and drive education and get people to think about what they're purchasing. We really believe people don't wake up every day wanting to pollute the planet. We believe that people just need the options. And so it's really an honor to be here today to speak with all of you, because there's so much that I think is happening in the industry, and it's really encouraging to hear about the work that you're all doing. And yeah, an honor to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Tony. At this point, I would like to turn over the series to our lead moderator, Fatima Anwar.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are. I am the founder and CEO of Ethical and Sustainable Sourcing, where we connect apparel brands in North America with manufacturers overseas in South Asia. And I specialize in Bangladesh. My network of manufacturers are ethical, sustainable, and price competitive. And a large part of that work also involves advocacy, which led to the creation of my podcast called Straight from the Source. I am very excited to be here with all of you today to have this very important conversation. As you're all probably aware, circularity and closed loop systems are essentially where products are designed, built, manufactured, and used in a way to utilize their maximum potential and maximum usage in circulation, where it at the same time reduces its impact on the environment, where it reduces waste, where it also very efficiently uses critical resources such as water, air, etc. So with that being said, I want to jump right in and throw this question out to all of our panelists. First, how do you think more companies can integrate closed loop materials into their production process? Ryan, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So this has been something we've really been a major challenge for ALGIX and for Bloom, and we really think it comes down to innovation and collaboration. So how do you integrate new technologies, new materials into the existing supply chain. This is the roadblock that we all face as innovators and entrepreneurs in this market. So the way maybe one of the first steps that a company could do is to look at a life cycle assessment of their waste, basically do a waste audit. What kind of waste do they produce, and how could that waste be repurposed? And when I say waste, people think typically, okay, it's scrap, it's maybe plastic waste, it's maybe post-consumer waste, and those are all very valid and very important elements. But one of the key aspects that ALGIX is trying, and Bloom is trying to raise awareness of in the market is our waste is also invisible. It's the CO2, it's the nitrogen, it's the phosphorus, it's our wastewater, it's our waste emissions. We produce as humans an enormous amount of pollution, and some of it's visible and some of it's not. And when we see algae blooms that are happening, whether it be in Lake Okeechobee or Lake Erie or Lake Tai, et cetera, we find that is really a representation of a more fundamental problem that's leading to issues like climate change, drinking water issues, habitat destruction. So how can we look at a holistic approach to capture not just the visible waste, but all of the waste, and then be able to really find factories that have the willingness, the openness, and really just the initiative to do trials, to do development. One of the big roadblocks that we ran into is that the factories that are part of the supply chain in Asia, they were not open or willing to initially utilize our Bloom resins. And it took enormous amounts of effort. We had to fly to China and meet with these factories, go out to dinner, do all this crazy stuff just to get them to try it. And, it's taken 4 years, but now we have almost 200 factories now with agreements with Bloom that are using our product as a sustainable ingredient in over 100 different brands product lines. So it's a long way to go. And I think the thing that got us over the edge was that the brands have to demand that their supply chain, that their factories are willing to try something different, to try something new, and to try something that has a sustainable angle to it. And to be able to understand what pollution, what type of waste products are in their backyard or in their process already that could be reutilized in their own products.
Great insight, Ryan. Thank you so much. Andrea, how about you?
Yeah, so I could share a little about my background that'll help me answer this question for you. But we actually developed this technology when I was working for a uniforms and branded merchandise company, and we really wanted to have more sustainable materials. It's a very large uniforms company. And I can tell you firsthand, I realized how difficult it was to see a technology that would want to use, or a raw material that would want to use, and use it for our uniforms program, because there's volume constraints, whether you're big or you're small, either way sometimes, cost constraints, supply chain constraints, performance constraints. So there were a lot of things we'd see and say, oh, we'd like to use that, but it doesn't work for all these different reasons. Mm-hmm. And in that case, we even had some volume. So I think that my advice would be, in terms of trying to use more closed loop materials and bring them into the production process, would be that, it can be overwhelming, and every small step is a step. So looking at the supply chain that you're using today, relying on those suppliers and asking them, what can you do to help us reach our goals? Ask them to educate you on what options are out there. If you see something that you want to use, a raw material or a technology, research it yourself, ask them to research it. If they won't research it, reach out to the technology. I'm sure if you reached out to Ryan and ALGIX, or if you reached out to me and you said, hey, we use this supplier, would like them to use your technology, we'd reach out to them as well and help educate them and get them set up on that. And then I think also relying on networks like the Textile Exchange, making sure that you're speccing materials that are Okotex or Cradle to Cradle or Blue Sign approved. So looking for various certifications, and maybe not looking for the silver bullet, but knowing that incremental change can really make big change.
I love that. And I love the idea of having this partnership approach. Absolutely fantastic. Ashley, what about you from the nonprofit space? What's your take on this?
Yeah, so we actually collect a lot of information about how companies are using these types of materials and what share that is of global total. So if you look at just polyester, for example, right now we're estimating that about 14% of all polyester in apparel is recycled. And so obviously there's a really big gap there. There's an opportunity for us to scale that up. And I think that the same is true in cotton and in wool and nylon. There's a huge opportunity for us to scale up the use of recycled materials. There's also something that, efficiency in the supply chain is another way to reduce the amount of materials that are being used, looking for ways that you can capture maybe some of that pre-consumer waste and get it back into your supply chain. Ryan mentioned doing a waste audit, and that's such a great idea. There's so many areas where there's efficiency that can be gained within the pre-consumer part of the supply chain, at the fiber, yarn, fabric level. We also have seen that, with the LCA results that we're getting, recycled polyester, mechanically recycled, performs really, really well. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. But we know that with additional investment, with additional work, the textile to textile recycling has a lot of potential as well. And that could also go towards answering some of those end of life challenges that we're dealing with as well. And so the textile exchange, when we work with companies, we love to level up. We love to, talk about good examples of adoption. And there are a lot of challenges in that space. And we know that with, just looking at polyester, for example, the price of virgin polyester makes it really difficult to introduce new things like recycling or, verification or those types of challenges. And so we really are looking for the industry to come together to identify what the obstacles are. Maybe we need additional investment in some of these chemical recycling technologies and some of these textile to textile spaces. But those are the places that we would love to see more investment, more attention, more commitments being made from the industry. And I think, that idea of a waste audit is also based on having a good relationship with your supply chain and knowing who is in your supply chain and talking to them about your goals, about your targets, and building out those long-term relationships. We have a lot of fantastic supply chain partners on this panel, and for brands and retailers to really take that initiative of partnering and making a commitment for the long haul, setting goals together about the volumes that you want to hit, the goals that you have for your product range, addressing those issues like price and performance that Andrea mentioned. So there's a lot of challenges, but definitely scaling up the use of recycled materials, looking for efficiency in the supply chain, and scaling up specifically textile to textile recycling is what we would love to see.
Ashley, I could not agree with you more, especially being on the other side of the supply chain. Having good relationships and good communication is just so important in efficient management. So now let's turn to Jorge. Jorge, you have such a large background in just recycled materials and such a depth of knowledge. What do you think that companies can do?
Well, I can talk about our experience as spinners, of spinning fibers, recycled fibers for many years. So I think that there is several ways to the companies to go to reuse the closed loop materials, and one of them is reusing our own materials. We are using our waste, our own waste again. Also, part of our waste is sent to other spinning companies that are used for other thick yarns for other purposes. And also, we are doing in the terms of pre-consumer, we are using a pre-consumer recycled cotton and making supply chains with promoting supply chains with brands from the brands, from the spinning to the fibers, and then from the post-consumer view, also there are a lot of things to do, and is to try to make agreements. For example, we have agreements with laundries, and we are getting things like bed linens and towels and use it that they send to us, we convert here into scrap and shoddy again, and we reuse in a new yarn. Also, there are other fibers that we are getting, and here, you know, in our area in Spain, there is a huge industry of producing scrap and shoddy for the spinning mills. And not only everything goes to the spinning, but there are other things that can do with the scrap that may go to the automotive industry or the cleaning industry. Okay, even to non-wovens industry are using scrap. So there are several ways to do this, as using our own things, and from the pre-consumer, using pre-consumer shoddy, and also from the post-consumer side, there are different ways to do all these close of the loop programs.
Wonderful, thank you. And last but not the least, Tony, what do you have to say?
A lot of really great points made here. I would add the biggest thing I see, and you know, we talk to brands across industry. It's, you know, it really takes and requires intent from leadership to be willing to absorb the initial costs, the time, the effort, to push supply chains, to push procurement, to understand that this is going to be an initial investment. You know, our material in particular, ocean plastic material, is gathered from remote beaches and coastlines from the most far places in the world, in places like the Maldives, right? And for us, it's about elevating social economic standards for the people who are actually collecting the material just as much as it is an environmental issue. This means that we're paying people above standard wages, there's insurances, and this ultimately leads to additional costs and a higher cost, but than even a recycled material. But at the same time, there is intent from our partners that understand that we can't just solve an environmental issue, we have to also address the social economic ones that go along with it, and that's going to have an additional cost. And really, the champions we see, the brands that we work with that really want to take ownership, are the ones that are willing to absorb a higher cost to help transform the supply chains, to work with the materials. It's a journey, and it doesn't happen overnight. And we really see that the brands that are most successful in adopting alternative materials, recycled materials, are going to push their suppliers, and they're ultimately, at the end of the day, going to benefit from commercial value, because the consumers are going to see this brand as being a champion, who are willing to maybe absorb some of these costs and go to market with something that's going to ultimately have a positive environmental impact, as opposed to maintaining the status quo. This will transform consumer mindsets. It will equal better sales, and it will actually help protect help protect the environment from damaging and toxic materials. So I would say it really comes down to an organization's intent, and a lot of the time that has to come down from the executive level.
Fantastic. So on the very, very high level, very briefly, just to round off this part of the conversation, could you all maybe talk about one or two things that companies can do to communicate their commitment to really closed loop materials, which is not always easy to understand, in a way that the consumers can grasp? Tony, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think I just touched on it. Ultimately, I would just say that there has to be an intent and a bit of patience and a bit of willingness to overcome some of the initial challenges. I think it's simple, but it actually it's a lot harder for companies that have heritage of using traditional virgin materials. And so I would just emphasize the fact that you need real executive buy-in, who are going to be able to get the organization to steer the ship in the right direction.
Andrea, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that when you're communicating your commitment to a closed loop material, if it's a specific material, I think it needs to be communicated in terms of what is the end benefit of that, because the average consumer might not know, what does that mean that it's closed loop? I mean, you know, it means a lot to all of us on this call, but maybe not to everyone. And this topic is actually kind of near and dear to my heart, because with biodegradable plastics, there are a lot of restrictions on how you can and can't market them. That those are guided by the FTC here, and then also the state of California. So for instance, we can't actually refer to our biodegradable fiber as the word biodegradable. So we do talk about the end benefits of reduction of plastic pollution and reduction of textile accumulation. And that's actually more meaningful and understandable to a consumer. So that's in terms of the technologies that are closed loops. But I think that the commitment overall from brands needs to be just super authentic and from the company. As Tony was saying, it kind of needs to come from the top, and it needs to, I think, the more conversation you can have with your customers about the challenges and the wins that you have, the better. Not making grandiose claims that you're going to have everything completely sustainable, but talking to your consumers about here are the challenges and here's why we use the materials we do. And here's where we're hoping to go and how we're planning to get there. And I think the consumers who care want to hear the story and understand it.
I agree. Ashley, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Andrea said a lot of what I would have said probably, but I think with standards, coming from a standards background, I can sometimes look at things in a very analytical and precise. You have to say exactly what you're doing, otherwise it's going to be misleading. But a lot of times consumers don't connect with that kind of language and that kind of very technical, very specific type of language. And something that I've examples that I've seen just in my own life as a consumer, what really resonates with me is when people are talking about the outcomes that their work has, and they're not just talking about, Andrea, you said that, I think, as well, talking about what the actual impact is and what you're trying to do. But also, I think, speaking about your products in terms of the values that you have, rather than all of the things that you've accomplished, because we all know that the textile industry is nowhere near where we need to be. And for consumers to hear a message that this product is totally sustainable and that it's eco is really misleading in a lot of cases. But if we can talk about the contribution that this product is making to specific outcomes, to things like climate, to things like circularity, and we can also talk about that from a very values-based approach, where we're talking about who we are as a company, why that decision was important to us, why we made it, what we care about. Those are things that a consumer is going to resonate with, and also that they will trust in the long run, because they don't want to see a list of, greenwashing is very real, and we see examples of it every day. And those kinds of things, they chip away at the trust that consumers have for the work that we're trying to do. And so if we can, really shift to outcome focused, value-based, and just, being honest about where we are, and really doing the work to get to know your supply chain and understand what impacts are happening, is going to enable you to be as honest as you need to be. We like to say at Textile Exchange that you can't tell the truth unless you know the truth. And so standards are, conveniently a nice solution for addressing that issue, to really verify what's happening in your supply chain. But I'll be the first to say that it's not sufficient on its own, that you still need to build those relationships with your suppliers and be able to really connect with your consumers.
Fantastic. Jorge, what about you?
Well, I think that the communication is the key. Is the key to get into the consumer. Otherwise we're gonna always be in textiles price-wise. You understand? So I think there are two ways now in order to make this. One is internally between the textile industry, and that we are already doing this by communicating the impact of the footprint in the planet of our materials in terms of savings of water, CO2, energy, chemical products. And that's what the industry is making an effort to do this, especially certain brands which are just focusing on that. They are doing a very well job on that. But to me, this is not only the main thing. I mean, the main thing is that we have to marry the consumer with the industry in the stores. The brands, they have to start to put hand tags, they have to start to put corners and and promoting all this impact of the sustainable fibers and sustainable yarns and fabrics and garments, and they have to put it aside and to get into the consumer into there. I think that we have the consumer out there, and even more now with the pandemic, I think we are accelerating this issue. And from the other side, from the consumer side, I think the administration and the politicians, they also have a lot of things to do about this in the schools, in the university, in the mass media, in the television spots. Finally, what I think is that we should reach something similar to the automotive industry. If you realize, many of the consumers right now are aware of if they want an electric car, they know why they are purchasing an electric car. Also, the food industry has made a very good job by selling the organic food. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go to a store and buy organic food, you know, the consumer knows what is buying. So I think more or less we have to reach in the textile industry the same focus that the automotive and the agriculture and the eco agriculture has reached already in the market.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And last but not the least, Ryan, do you want to round us off?
Yeah, I mean, everything that I was going to say, I think has been said very well here. So I would say really in conclusion and in summary, marketing is about values, and those values are critical to the brand. And I think those values, we're going to see more and more companies adopting sustainability as part of their core DNA. So when we talk about marketing, when we talk about values, it's all about net impacts, and it is about the outcome. We don't want to bombard the consumer with too much technical detail or use terms that are ambiguous. So what we do at Bloom is we really provide those LCA data-driven metrics that are relatable. People know what a gallon of water is. People know what a kilogram of or what a pound is. So when you talk about things in terms of the actual quantifiable savings, that is where the rubber meets the road. And so we believe that's really critical, and we're encouraged because as our brands are navigating this space, which is still relatively new, especially as it relates to these quantifiable metrics, we are seeing that the retailers are actually coming to us and asking us, how can we get more Bloom into our customers' product lines? How can we communicate as a retailer the benefits of our customers, our vendors, utilizing more sustainable products and materials? So I think that now that we're having the retailers asking these questions, their marketing teams are starting to realize that they've got to change the buying habits of their customers in a way that will actually provide benefits to this outcome-driven or net impact-driven approach to sustainability and the acceleration of the circular economy.
Wonderful. And with that being said, I would love to hand it over to our student moderator, Austin Sierra, to take questions from our audience.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you all for having me. I'm extremely appreciative to be in front of all these amazing panelists today. My name is Austin Sierra. I'm a fashion merchandising major at LAM College with a minor in sustainability. I love design, and I love designing circular systems. So with that being said, let's jump into the questions. So we had a question early on specifically for Ryan. I want to start this off. Do you get contacts from water treatment plants or eco groups that want to use your product, or do you do more of the reaching out?
So we've met with the Lake Erie stakeholders. We routinely meet with utility companies to encourage them and to identify the types of algae cultivation technologies that can be utilized on their plants to intercept the pollution and produce this new valuable agricultural commodity. So on the one hand, we have partnerships in those areas where we are working with the supply side of the algae and the interception of pollution. The governments people are looking for solutions. The government's looking for solutions. EPA is restricting the amount of pollution factories can emit. So therefore, they're looking for ways to reduce their levels of nitrogen and phosphorus and CO2 in their emissions. So on that side, I believe people are looking, but also people don't know exactly what to do. So we're helping provide that. On the other end, it was a long, been 10 years of us knocking on lots of doors, being told we're crazy, or it doesn't make any sense, or nobody wants to pay for green. We hear that for years and years. Now we have people emailing us daily wanting to start projects with us. So I do feel that the tides have turned a bit. Brands do recognize that sustainability is not just a flash in the pan trend. It is here to stay. And so we really are grateful that more and more companies are seeking us out as a raw material provider to help them incorporate sustainable products into their supply chain, which will allow them to promote their enhanced bio-based content or net impacts to their customers.
Amazing. All right, and now I want to turn it over to all the other panelists looking for quick fire answers. Does anyone feel that it's the consumers that are driving the actions of the brands to go closed loop rather than the brands wanting to change their own supply chains themselves?
I can jump in on this one. We have a lot of brands and retailers in our network that I talk to on a pretty regular basis. My experience over the last 10 years has been really that it is coming from the brands on what the issue is that is addressed. And then when the issue is talked about, it's coming from the consumer to say, how do you know? Do you have information to back that up? So I think the brands and retailers are really driving, in my view, a lot of them are driving the agenda. They're thinking about the future of how to find reliable sources, the broad level impacts that they are seeing across the full supply chain. But I think consumers are asking questions about performance, or how they really know what impact they're having.
Actually, I'll add a bit to that as well. Recent studies from Nielsen have shown that 80% of millennials and even a higher percentage of Gen Z want to purchase products and services from brands that are doing good for the environment. Now, that also, that demographic is also, I think, very in touch with what's real and what's authentic. And I think that means that the consumers are driving a lot of this, and they don't always know exactly what they want. And so brands have to help figure that out. I think people want options. I think consumers are more and more demanding. To your point, Ashley, they're demanding to be able to make purchases that are not going to be destroying the environment, and they're becoming more educated on what that means and what their purchase means. And the future generation, I think, has a lot of purchasing power, and all of the brands we speak to are also thinking very much about what that means. And it's really an opportunity to really take leadership for a lot of these brands and give a better alternative to this consumer base that is ultimately demanding it. And I think from a policy standpoint, it's probably going to take too long for governments and policies to be implemented that are really going to make the transformation in the time that we need it to.
Can I jump in on that comment? Actually, that was really interesting, because one of the core elements that we're trying to achieve with Bloom is to provide an economic argument that pollution has value. And if we can show, just like what Parley's doing, the raw material, if there's demand for the recycled plastic more so than virgin, it's going to incentivize companies to produce it, to go out and harvest this in a more efficient way at scale, and that'll accelerate the ability for us to remediate all these problems we've had in the industry. So from us, it's about providing value with the algae and providing an economic equation that allows us to valorize pollution in a way that it incentivizes the interception prior to it doing damage to the environment. I think that's a really critical point.
Incredible. It's also amazing in how in-depth everything can go. Travis, did you have your hand up as well?
I have a quick question. So how often do you use sustainable energy sources in your production or in your process of whatever it is that you do individually?
I can start answering that. So our local utility grid just installed 700 acres of photovoltaic solar panels onto our grid area. So we are being fed by a lot of solar power now. We don't use any coal. We're predominantly natural gas. So our carbon footprint to produce our products here in Mississippi is dramatically lower. It's about 40% less emissions for the same kilowatt hour compared to that same process happening in China. Now, at some point, China is going to replace more and more of their coal to more renewable or cleaner power. But in the meantime, we're actually focusing on not just using cleaner power, but also lower carbon shipping methods, more efficient sourcing, the drying process of the algae, minimizing the energy cost that it takes to process the material. This is one of the big questions when it comes to reclaiming and recycling materials is collection, sorting, drying, cleaning. All that takes energy, takes people, takes labor. So that all has to go into the LCA when you look at the big picture of resolving and providing these sustainable products and what the net impact is at the end of the day.
We also have 3,000 kilowatts on our roofs in the factory. Obviously, for the spinning plant, it's not too much. We just covered a little bit of our needs. But in Spain, there for many years, there is a big industry of solar panels, energy production, and it's growing now. And probably very, very, very soon, the majority of our use of energy is gonna come from solar panel energy that is installing all over the place right now here in our region. Also, the use of recycled cotton there is a big savings by using recycled cotton on energy, comparing with virgin or even organic cotton. Not only that, water and emissions of CO2.
The savings are tremendous, honestly, and it amazes me how there's so many different solutions and so many different ways everyone can go about bringing sustainability more to life and the materials. But I wanted to jump to George again, and if Ryan and Tony can also add in as well. If you currently have any stretch fibers that replace elastane? Yeah.
No.
Elastic,
no.
Yeah.
We are using recycled polyester from plastic bottles, and now we are also using a new project to an additive made in the United States, but this is still a little bit a secret, which is making this microplastic disappear from recycled polyester, not virgin polyester. So we are using recycled polyester and putting the additive in order to reduce the micro to avoid the microplastic. And this yarn is made with recycled polyester and recycled cotton. This is 100% recycled yarn. The thing is that many of our customers and the retailers, which are they don't like the microplastics, and the point is that the many brands now, they don't want the polyester even if it's recycled because of the microplastic, sorry. And what we are doing by getting this additive is try to avoid that problem.
I can just say on the elastane thing, I know the question wasn't for me, but we have heard of a few that are in kind of lab and small scale that are doing recycled elastane. So again, I don't know the availability. I don't know how widespread it is, but it is starting to happen.
I wanted to toss it over to the entire panel once again, looking for those quick-fired answers. I have a pretty big question. Do you see a possible standardization of information from consumers to more easily understand each garment's environmental or social impact? Kind of like how nutrition facts are the food and like the packaging. Do you ever feel like that's ever going to be a standard where consumers are going to see those CO2 emissions and those impacts?
And working on that right now, where they're using the life cycle assessment data to create that nutritional label from an environmental perspective. So yeah, I think it's coming. I don't know how long it'll be until it's mainstream, but yeah, that's definitely in the works, I believe.
And Ryan, do you think that that's something that brands are collaborating on so that there will be some standardization among it? Or Ashley, do you know anything about that?
I would say that since they're generated from LCA data, those metrics are standardized. Whether the brands are sharing notes, how they're going to communicate that, I don't really know. But I think the metrics themselves, just through standard life cycle assessment practices, there is some standard processes and metric that everybody can rely upon.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a great question, and it's an area that we've been kind of looking into as well. There's also, you know, we are big believers in using a lot of really strong data, and definitely in using LCAs. The standardization across LCAs isn't quite as simple as we would love for it to be, and it can get, especially when you're talking about the scope of the LCA. You know, when you try to compare polyester with cotton, it gets really complicated because you're kind of comparing apples and oranges. And so those kinds of challenges, we're really looking at how maybe Textile Exchange, maybe in partnership with, you know, Sustainable Apparel Coalition is also working a lot on the HIG index on kind of capturing consistent measurements. And Textile Exchange is really interested in an LCA plus approach where you're taking not just the quantitative data from an LCA, but combining that with more qualitative things like microplastic impact or animal welfare or social responsibility, things that can't really be captured by LCAs as well, and bridging those things together. Taking that all the way to the point where it's standardized enough to communicate effectively with consumers is a big, big task, but I think it's one that everybody would really benefit from.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for answering these questions, and thank you all for having me. It's been an honor, and at this time, I would like to pass it back over to Fatima.
Well, as they say, time flies when you're having fun, and time has flown by. So we're actually at time, but I would like to maybe request a really brief answer from our panelists, 30-40 seconds each, on resources for our audiences who are interested in learning more, and perhaps ways that they can reach out to you if they're interested in your particular field or product. Ryan, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Bloom Treadwell and bloomtreadwell.com. You can follow me personally at Ryan Hunt on LinkedIn. I post about all the cool stuff we're doing with algae and brands, so I'll be happy to answer any questions offline. Thank you.
Andrea?
You can learn more about Cyclo technology at cyclotextiles.com, and feel free to reach out to us through that website. I actually get those emails myself, so I'd be happy to respond to anybody and tell you more about what we do and how we do it.
Fantastic. Ashley?
Yep. Textile Exchange is a really good resource. You can find a lot of information on our website. If you have any questions about standards, you can email standards@textileexchange.org. You're also welcome to contact me directly. My email address is ashley@textileexchange.org. Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic. Jorge?
Well, it's been a pleasure to meet all of you here from Spain. I hope to see you soon. I think we are all putting a lot of value to sustainability. We are all doing a great job, and we have to keep pushing on that. We are doing great for this planet, and I think that we have missed a little thing. I think we have also should talk a little bit about the traceability and credibility of the products, and that's something that we can postpone for another meeting. And if you wanted to see us, it's ecolife.com, belda.com. We are there to attend all your questions. Thank you very much also to the audience.
Thank you. Lastly, Tony?
Thank you, Fatima, and thanks everybody for having me on the panel today. It's been great with all of these minds on here to learn a bit more about what's happening in the industry. I would say from Parley's point of view, you know, we look at plastic as something that is a design failure, and that we need to actually create materials that are going to be more in harmony and synchronicity with nature and not destroying it. And in the meantime, we have built an incredible product with Ocean Plastic to drive awareness and create people's understanding to change behavior. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to prevent plastic because of the questions that we've gone around with the microplastics, what it does to your skin, what it does to your body, and for the environment. At the end of the day, avoid using single-use plastic, intercept it, redesign the material altogether. Join Parley.tv, join Instagram, follow us on all social channels. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you all very much, and have a great day.
Well, with that said, it has been an amazing pleasure moderating this wonderful conversation. My name is Fatima Anwar. You can find me on LinkedIn. My podcast is called Straight from the Source. We're on iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, and it talks about supply chain sustainability. With that, I wish you a very good day, and back to you, Monica.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all the speakers, the moderators, the attendees, and a huge shout out to our sponsors, all of you that made these conversations possible. We have EcoLife Llorens, Kendor Textiles Limited, and the Accessories Council. If anyone is interested in becoming a sponsor, please reach out to myself. My name is Monica, or Juana or Gladys. You can find our email and information at fashiondex.com. And while you're at fashiondex.com, if you click on the store, you'll see the most updated literature and online sourcing, all available for you. Please sign up and join us next week, week 10. We're going to have a conversation on fashion waste and the circular economy. Speakers include Jessica Schreiber of Fab Scrap, Kathleen Kirkwood of BRA Recycling Agency, Rich Cohen of Elevate, and Tara Maurice of McGuffin and Company. Moderator will be Andrea Kennedy of Fashion Dex, and co-moderator will be Rebecca Margolis. Also, week 11, we'll be having a conversation on social compliance and ensuring ethical practices in fashion. Speakers include Avita Seferan of RAP, Simone Cipriani of Ethical Fashion Initiative, Fatima Anwar of Ethical and Sustainable Sourcing, and Nancy Miller of LIM College. Moderator will be Austin Sierra of LIM College, and co-moderator will be Riley Bott of LIM College. That is all today. I hope you enjoy your long weekend. Stay sustainable and have a great day.